Good morning, everybody. Happy Mother's Day. When I was looking for scripture for today, there's a lot of them out there in the Bible, if you will, and something that struck me to the core when I was doing my research for today, and it comes from the book of Isaiah. And it's kind of like if you've ever seen a movie and everything around the central character goes dark and the spotlight shines right on them. That's what happened when I found this scripture. It's from the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 13. As one whom his mother comforts, so I will comfort you. That scripture from Isaiah demonstrates the power of a mother's love. Think about that verse. God states that his comfort will be that of your mother. The power of that statement should open everyone's eyes and realize that God knows the strength of a mother's comfort. A mother's comfort protects, shields, and feels the pain of their child. A mother's comfort can be seen in her eyes and heard in her words. Who was the first one that you went to when you were a kid and you got hurt? We all ran to mom. And as we're there crying, who was there to kiss the boo-boo? Mom. She would talk softly, and as you listened to her words, your crying became sniffles. And by the time she was done, she could have said with a smile, "There, all better." How could that not make a child feel better? Isn't that how God is with us? We deal with the hurt, mental, physical, emotional. And when we turn to God, he provides us the comfort like our mothers did. As it states in Proverbs, I will guide you in the way of wisdom, and I will lead you in upright paths. When you walk, your steps will not be hampered, and when you run, you will not stumble. God knew the importance of a mother's guidance. Mothers provide such confidence and direction that as a kid, you feel empowered. Like she's your secret superpower, if you will. I remember when in elementary school, we'd go on field trips, and, well, they would ask parents to provide transportation to the field trip, which was typically a museum. And I remember how excited I was the day that my mom was providing transportation. I felt important in a way that only a kid could feel back then. Plus, I got to see my mom during the school day, which I thought was great. And as I grew, I loved my mom, without a doubt. But as most mothers know, that adolescent age was the beginning of me spreading my wings, if you will. And I didn't want to be babied anymore. And trying to find that in between was a bit challenging for me and my mom. Mom didn't want me to grow up too fast, and, well, I couldn't wait to grow up. Now, I remember when I was in the 8th grade, they were having a homecoming dance, and I wanted to go. And I knew the girl I wanted to ask. And my mom flat out refused. "You're not going to that dance." But I was relentless. And as I was growing up, she would always tell me, "Tom, you're so much mature and older for your age than all these other kids. And I never really paid attention to it until this moment, right here, right now. And so I used it against her. I told her, you had told me for years that I acted older and more mature than most kids my age. And I made it clear that you either believed that statement or you didn't. And without missing a beat, my impetuous self, she paused and smiled at me, and she said, that is correct. You are, but not to the extent you can go to the dance. And I was furious. I mean, this was my moment. You know, I was no longer in elementary school because our high school was 8 through 12. I was now in high school. And so I looked at my dad and I'm like, do you have anything to say? And he just looked at me and said, your mother's right. And so I stomped off to my room, very angry. Now, in retrospect, they probably saved me from embarrassing myself because I found out that the girl I had planned to ask, and as confident as I was, that she had no interest. So that would have been a humiliating experience on my behalf. So I dodged that bullet, thankful to my mom and my dad. And my mother put everyone before herself. I truly never lacked for anything that I really needed. And as you all know, I have 2 older brothers and twin sisters, and a younger brother, Robbie. And when me and my younger brother were born, our parents were in their early to mid-40s. They say you never know the size of a tree till it's dropped. Well, the same goes for someone that you love. And this also applies to all of us. I lost my parents in my mid-20s, 18 months apart. My mother went first, and I was completely crushed. I was not prepared for that. And I was still in the Army at the time. And my dad died 18 months later, and I realized at 25 years of age, my parents were gone. And my kids would never get to know them, never get to have influence under them, and realize just how special and amazing they were. And a day doesn't go by that I don't miss them. And I've told my kids stories of their grandparents. And one of the things that my dad would do is every 4 to 6 months, he'd pull out the 8mm projector. And he, occasionally he would pull out the camera and he would, do the 8mm film, record whatever. They were silent. It was not like you could hear. And so it was in the living room and we'd use the wall and, Mom, Robbie and I were on the couch and Dad was beside the projector and he was rolling and we were watching. And I remember this one we'd never seen before. And it's kind of funny because it was just this guy, this adult male walking. And we're like, who is this? And apparently, I guess our film got mixed up with someone else's because you would take it and drop it off at, like People's, which in a Walgreens now. Anyway, so my mom's like, hey, turn around. And at that moment, that guy did and stuck his tongue out. And we all just died laughing. We just couldn't stop. And we laughed so hard we cried. And, mothers are essential to the well-being and the development of their children. They truly are. There's no love like that of a mother's love. And as it states in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 through 7, and we've all know this verse, we've heard this verse. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And I quite honestly believe that right there defines a mother's love. Moms come in all types. Neighborhood moms, church moms, sports moms, school moms. Every woman has the capacity to have a motherly impact on a child. whether their own or not. Now, most of you know that on this particular day, there's a story that I read, and it's a tearjerker, but I'm not going to read that today. I've got a different one. But it is in its own way a tearjerker. So I'm just preparing you. So in closing, here's a story that I found both heartwarming and bittersweet. This is not the angel story, but it's one that's just as good. When I was quite young, my father had one of the first telephones in our neighborhood, and I remember it well. The polished old case fastened to the wall, the shiny receiver hung on the side of the wooden box. I was too little to reach the telephone, but would listen with fascination when my mother talked into it. I came to realize that somewhere inside that wonderful device lived an amazing person with the name, information please. And there was nothing she did not know. I overheard my father saying to my mother that information please could supply anybody's number and even give you the correct time of day. My first personal experience with this genie in the bottle came one day while Dad was at work and my mother was visiting a neighbor. Amusing myself at the tool bench in the basement, I whacked my finger with a hammer. The pain was terrible, but there didn't seem to be any reason for crying because there was no one at home to give me sympathy. I walked around the house sucking my throbbing finger. Finally, arriving at the stairway, I saw the telephone. Quickly, I ran for the footstool in the parlor and dragged it to the landing. Climbing up, I unhooked the receiver and held it to my ear. Information, please! I spoke desperately into the mouthpiece just above my head. A click or two later, a small, clear voice spoke into my ear. Information, she answered. I hurt my finger! I wailed into the phone. The tears came readily enough now that I had an audience. Isn't your mother home? Came the question. Nobody's home but me, I blubbered. Are you bleeding? No, I replied. I hit my finger with the hammer and it hurts. Can you open the icebox? She asked. I said I could. Then chip off a little piece of ice and hold it to your finger, said the voice. I did what she said and my finger stopped hurting. After that, I called information please for everything. I asked her for help with my geography, and she told me where Philadelphia was located. She helped me with my math. She told me my pet chipmunk, which I had caught in the park just the day before, would eat fruits and nuts. Then there was the time when Petey, our pet canary, died. I called information and told her the sad story, and she listened. Then said the usual things grown-ups say to soothe a child, but I was unconsoled. I asked her, why is it that birdies should sing so beautifully and bring joy to all families and only end up in a heap? And she must have sensed my deep concern, for she said quickly and quietly, Paul, always remember that there's another world to sing in. And somehow I felt better. Another day I was on the telephone again. Information, please. I spoke into the receiver. Information, said the now familiar voice. How do you spell fix? I queried. All of these conversations took place on the phone in my childhood home in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. When I was 9 years old, we moved across the country to Boston. I missed my friend very much. I longed to say information, please, into that old wooden box back home, and somehow I never thought of trying the tall, shiny new phone that sat on a table in the hall. As I grew into my teens, the memories of those childhood conversations never really left me. Often in the moments of doubt and perplexity, I would recall the serene sense of security I had then. I appreciated now how patient, understanding, and kind she was to have spent her time on a little boy. A few years later, on my way west to college, I had to stop at the airport in Seattle. I had a half an hour or so between planes. I spent 15 minutes on the phone with my sister, who lived there now. Then out of the blue, I decided to dial my home tone operator and found myself saying, "Information, please." Miraculously, I heard the small, clear voice I knew so well. "Information," she replied. I hadn't planned this, but heard myself saying, "Could you please tell me how to spell fix?" There was a long pause. Then came the soft-spoken answer, "I guess your finger must have healed by now." I laughed. "So it's really still you. I wonder if you have any idea how much you meant to me during that time." "I wonder," she said, "if you know how much your calls meant to me. I never had any children, and I used to look forward to your calls. I told her how often I had thought of her over the years and asked if I could call her again when I came back to visit my sister. "Please do," she said. "Just ask for Sally." 3 months later, I was back in Seattle. A different voice answered information, and I asked for Sally. "Are you a friend?" she asked. "Yes, a very special old friend." "I'm sorry to have to tell you this," she said. "Sally had been working part-time for the last few years because she was sick. She died 5 weeks ago." And before I could hang up, she said, "Wait a minute. Didn't you say your name was Paul?" Yes. Yes, I did." "Well, Sally left a message for you, Paul. She wrote it down in case you called, and let me read it to you. The note says, 'Tell him I still say there is another world.'" To sing him. I'm sorry. He'll know what I mean. I thanked her and hung up the phone, and I knew exactly what Sally meant. I thought that I thought by changing the story, the result would be different at the end, but it's not. Sometimes when I'm up here, it's just both fulfilling and overwhelming. And sometimes the message it hits home. And that's just who I am. And I can't not be who I am and not be honest with you. And so when I'm doing a sermon, sometimes I'm standing up here with a lot of conviction. Other times I try to make it humorous. And sometimes the lightning bolt strikes and hits the core of who I am. And it just does. And anyway, we all know and we've all experienced the love of our mothers. And without them, I don't think we would be half the individuals that we are, because a mother's love is beyond reproach. They only think about others, to include their children and the neighborhood kids. And we're very fortunate to have them in our lives. And not a day goes by that I don't wish I still had mine, but I'm very grateful to have had her. And, knowing that I lost her back in 91 still has an impact, as I'm sure all of our mothers have on us. So I hope that everybody today has a wonderful day. And let's remember the moms who played a role in our lives, whether neighborhood, school, sports, whatnot. They all had some sort of impact. And if it wasn't for them, we still probably wouldn't be who we are.